tarde! Vocês estão me vendo aqui de novo, voltando. A gente fez um painel muito legal sobre o Frank Miller, sobre a carreira dele. E agora a gente vai fazer um painel também de quadrinhos, que também promete ser muito bacana, com um desenhista que só desenhou a HQ mais vendida de todos os tempos, um cara que definiu os quadrinhos dos anos 90. Eu estou falando do Jim Lee. Welcome, sir.
Oi.
What did you learn in Portuguese in these 2 days?
I learned oi.
Oi.
Yeah. Obrigado. Como vai você?
Yeah, that's great. Is this your first time in Brazil?
No, this is my second time. This is the first time in São Paulo, though. I was in Rio de Janeiro 20 years ago. And yeah, it's very nice. But the people here are super friendly, super enthusiastic. So it's an amazing trip so far. And definitely, my hat's off to the people that organized this show. And for you guys for taking out, isn't this a work day today, right? Today's a work day,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So thank you for taking time off to come to this. For a second-year show, this is unbelievable. The amount of people and the enthusiasm and love for comics and superheroes is just unheard of. There's nothing like this in the United States. So this has just been an incredible, incredible party from my point of view. So thank you guys for coming out.
And it's been a great time to superheroes, right? For Marvel heroes and DC heroes, it's been a great time, right?
Yeah. It's we like to call it the new golden age of comic books. There's never been a time where so many people are familiar with all these characters, and I'm not talking about Superman and Batman because everyone knows who those characters are. But you get down to the Flash and Green Arrow and Hawkman, and all these characters are going to be in TV shows going forward. I never thought there would be a day like this, honestly. When I got into comic books, I thought it was going to be a secret society, and I would just kind of draw them in my house, and I would interact with a small group of fans. But now, even my grandparents will ask me, about what's happening in the movies, and your insurance agent, and just everyone's familiar with it. So it really has become a huge part of pop culture, and not just American pop culture, but obviously international pop culture.
All right. On this panel, we'll talk a lot about your career, because you're just one of the biggest artists in comics, and one of the biggest names in comics in the last 30 years. And let's start from the beginning. What kind of comic books did you read when you were a kid?
I read a lot of the books. When I was young, my parents didn't want me to become a comic book artist. My father was a doctor, and so he wanted me to become a doctor as well. So I would have to go to the library and check out these books, and there would be books where they just kind of reprinted old Batman and Superman stories from the 40s and 50s and 60s. And I would check those out and have them in my house for weeks on end. And my parents let me buy comic books every now and then, but usually one copy, maybe a month. So I had a very small collection of 300 to 500 comic books, but I read them over and over and over again. And I was just really drawn to the artists. I really collected the comic books for the art. And if an artist stopped drawing the story, I stopped reading the story. So a lot of times I don't know what the endings are to a lot of my favorite storylines. And that's why I became an artist rather than a writer, because I really don't know how to end a story most of the time, because I've never read a lot of conclusions myself.
Being a Korean in America, did you relate to X-Men or Superman as an outsider?
I'll tell you that in general, as an immigrant, I was born in South Korea. I felt more kinship to the X-Men or characters that were on the fringe of society, because I always felt different. We moved from Korea to Ohio, which is kind of the middle of America, and I was the only Asian person in my school, and then I lived in St. Louis, which is also in the Midwest. So you always feel like you're on the outside watching other people and learning their customs and the way they behave. And so I was very good, I think, at observing people and understanding body language and customs and traditions, and that actually helped me, I think, become a better artist, because you are just training your eye to notice these sort of subtle things that we all communicate and create relationships in a nonverbal way with one another. So both thematically, characters like the X-Men appealed to me, but also just in general as an artist, I think being an outsider made me feel more observant of what I was seeing.
And do you have some kind of inspiration in Oriental culture? Because there's a lot of artists that draw like manga in Western pop culture and comics. Do you have that inspiration or the?
Not at the time. You know, manga really was maybe around back then, but I just grew up on American comics. I didn't first see manga books until maybe the 1980s when they were being imported to the United States. Akira was one of the very first ones by Otomo. It was being brought in and colorized. And then Miyazaki's work, of course. So a lot of this stuff was coming in around that time, but it did influence the work I was doing on X-Men back in the day.
And how did you learn to draw?
That's a good question. I think I was always born with some talent. Both my parents have artistic ability, but when I was like 5 years old, they got a teacher for me, and we used to draw in oil pastels all the time. And then after that, I just drew all the time. High school, grade school, I would draw on the desks. I would just draw all the time, even in class, and I would get into trouble. But I knew I was on a good path. I think it was like 3rd grade, so maybe I was like 9 or 10 years old, and I drew a piece of paper, sketch of, I think, Nighthawk or something, and the teacher came by, and she grabbed it, and she was gonna rip it up. She like started crumpling it up, and then she looked at it, and she liked it, and so she took it to her desk, and she pinned it up on the wall. So she was probably my very first fan, and I was trying to charge her some money for it, but she wouldn't pay me anything. But so that was kind of when I knew, like, hey, you know, this is, maybe I have a little bit of ability more so than the next person.
You have to be obsessive about it, right? To
Absolutely obsessed. I think it's like anything else. If you want to be a great athlete or pianist or anything, there's a tremendous number of hours that are spent repeating the same kind of work over and over again before you actually start getting good.
Mm-hmm. And when did you realize that you could make a living out of it?
Gosh, well, I think I knew I could make a living because I knew that people were getting paid to do it. So it was not so much how much you were getting paid, but once I knew that people got paid to draw comic books, that's when I really committed myself 100% and really just focused on trying to break into comic books. So I graduated from Princeton University with a degree in psychology. I was all set to go to medical school. I took my these standardized tests. I had some recommendations, all that stuff. But I told my parents, look, I'm going to take a year off from applying to medical school, and I'm going to try to break into this thing called comic books. And I moved back into their house, much to their disappointment, I'm sure. And I spent a lot of time just drawing every day. I'd set up a drawing board right next to my bed. I'd roll up right out of bed, I'd start drawing. And I drew like 12 hours a day. And I took about 3 months maybe before I started getting some positive response from companies. So that's how it works. So if any of you guys are aspiring artists, just remember, I really start treating it like a job before they start paying you, before it is a job. You want to make sure that you have the dedication and time and discipline to sit down and draw for 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day, 5 to 6, 7 days a week, because that's really what we do. There's a lot of work involved.
And when you started doing comics, the media was starting to be taken more seriously because of Alan Moore and Frank Miller books. Did you take it into consideration when you chose to be an artist?
No, because it was still very, very small. So that was 1986 when that happened, and Dark Knight Returns came out in 1986. Yeah. But even then, that was a real rare exception to the rule. Very few magazines or newspapers or covered comic books at all. Dark Knight Returns was the first one to kind of break that barrier, and it got covered in the New York Times and Village Voice. And but for the most part, no one knew who comic book creators were. No one knew who Iron Man was, outside of people that just created comic books. And that's where when the movies started coming out, with Spider-Man and all these other movies, that's when the tide really changed and turned, and then all of a sudden you realize that this was expanding beyond just this secret society of people, and it's really cool because I never ever thought that it would ever get to this point. I never thought I would be here in Brazil, of all places, talking to hundreds of people that were passionate about comic books. Just never, I thought I would be drawing superheroes in my underwear next to my parents' bed all the time for the rest of my life, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to draw comic books. And the great thing about working in the arts, I think, is that it's very much an adventure. It's a journey, and every year some really cool new thing happens, and so here I am. And I couldn't wish for a better outcome, I guess.
And how did you get into Marvel? Because that happened kind of quickly, right? In the end of the 80s?
It took about 6 months where I was drawing constantly at home before I got work. But I was mailing in 20 packets to DC, Marvel, Eclipse, First Comics, like all these different publishers. And oddly enough, the only companies that really showed interest were the two biggest companies. You would think it'd be the reverse, that would be the small companies that would be interested. But I got some rejection letters that I posted online that you can read, and maybe they'll give you some inspiration. But yeah, there was all sorts of problems. I mean, the work was not very good, but I got to the point where it was just good enough, and then they hired me and they started paying me to get better, and so it was a great opportunity. And so, yeah, I started working at Marvel 1 year after I graduated from college, so it was 1987.
Mm-hmm. Of course, you draw the best-selling comics of all time, X-Men 1 in '91. Do you have the original with you? Do you still have it?
I carry it around with me every day in my back pocket. Hey, look. No, I don't. Do I have a copy at home?
Yeah.
I had boxes and boxes. I thought they were going to be worth some money. I threw them all away. So no, I have some. I have some of my comics somewhere in the house, but I read pretty much digitally now. I really don't look at a lot of my work until I'm at a convention and people bring me the comic books, and I kind of flip through and go, oh, that was cool, I remember that, I drew that, you know, in a bus or a train in France. I don't really remember the story. I remember where I was, where I drew that cover or page, because a lot of times, because I'm traveling, there were pages from Batman Hush that I drew while I was in Bologna, Italy, and there were covers I did in a hotel in Berlin. So that's kind of what I remember, the circumstances of the drawing, and maybe how difficult it was to get the drawing back to the United States.
Mm-hmm. And what's your best memory from those years, those X-Men years?
Best memories of those X-Men years? Well, look, that was my favorite comic book as a kid. I know I work at DC, so please don't put that online anywhere. But I love the X-Men. I went to a private school. They went to a school. They wore blue and yellow pajamas. I wore blue and yellow pajamas. And I really, like you said, I really responded to this idea that they had strange abilities and they were kind of shunned by normal society. So when I finally got to the Marvel, that was my chief goal. And so being able to work with Chris Claremont on the X-Men was a lifelong dream. And so that was definitely the career highlight for sure.
Mm-hmm. And when books started to sell a lot, like 1 million copies, did you consider yourselves like superstars of comics?
Oh no, no. You only feel like important when you come to a comic book convention like this. When you go home, it's like you got to take out the trash, you got to take the kids to school. You know, there's a lot of other stuff that happens. And drawing in and of itself is a very arduous, laborious process. I mean, if you look online, you'll see me draw sketches, and I can draw something very, very quickly. But when I draw a page, there's a lot of time spent in laying it out, a lot of erasing. I mean, it'll take like 10 to 12 hours to draw a single page. And then you have to draw like 22 pages and a cover to tell a story. So it's a lot of work.
When you guys created Image Comics, you did it so that creator could own their own comics. At the beginning, do you think that it could last, like this idea of create your own comics?
I don't know if we were thinking about it too hard like that. We were 27 years old when we started Image Comics. I was 27. And we really didn't have a game plan. We didn't go to business school. We didn't have like a 5-year, plan. We just were creating comics and putting them out, and the reaction was enormous. That was when life got a little crazier because the comic book sold millions and millions of copies, and so we were making a lot of money, and a lot of crazy things were happening. There was a lot of meetings with actors and directors and people that wanted to make toys from our ideas, and so that's when things got really kind of crazy. I remember, flying from California to New York for a meeting to talk about toys, and then getting back on a plane and flying back the same day. So there was a lot of just, really, it was just nonstop. There was always things going on, and just, we'd have like these crazy meetings, and we were all like, young men at the time, and Todd McFarlane would be in a meeting with his shirt off, and Todd's he's a pretty built guy, but I don't want to see Todd's physique. I don't want to see his body, right? So, and then I had a baby in a sling, and then Rob Liefeld was jumping up and down on the bed, while we're trying to have this business meeting with this guy that's trying to do business with Image Comics. So it was very much a strange business, and we had some really amazing memories at the time, but we had no idea that it would eventually morph into what it is now.
There's a lot of creations from that time, like Gen 13 and Wildcats. They become like the image of the 90s in terms of anatomy and your visual style. Do you have some kind of nostalgia of these teams? Do you imagine working with it again, Gen 13 on Wildcats?
Sure, I have a lot of nostalgia for it. I mean, look, it was a long time ago, but it feels like yesterday to me. But I would definitely, one of the reasons we haven't done Wildcats in the new 52 for DC yet is I want to be very involved in that. So that's really my baby. And so eventually, yeah, pretty soon, if I could reveal something for the first time, that there might be something with Wildcats in the near future.
When you say involved, do you mean drawing the series, or maybe doing covers? Or?
I used involved for a specific reason, because it means something very general right now. But I don't want to really spoil it beyond that, but there will be something involving me going forward, and yeah, it probably will be the art. No one wants to see me write the Wildcats. They want to see some artwork, so that would be awesome.
At that time, I believe you sold Wildstorm to DC because you didn't want to be an executive, you want to be an artist full-time. Is that right?
I don't know if executive is the word. I like running operations, that's kind of cool. At the time, when I sold the company, the business was, this is really kind of dry material, but the business was changing. It was moving from a periodical model to a book market model. And to be in the book market business required a lot more capitalization. It required more of an investment to basically print books and then store them in warehouses. And it was a very different kind of business. And so we didn't have the resources to make that adjustment. And so, whereas DC did. And so it was a really good fit for us.
Speaking of your style, do you feel the need as an artist to change your style from time to time, like to keep it fresh or to keep it new? How do you feel about it?
I absolutely think you have to. For any aspiring artists out there, the biggest thing is going outside. As much as the hours you need to spend at the drawing table, you need to go outside and travel and see the world and have experiences, because that influences your work and it keeps it from getting stagnant. So one of the reasons I love traveling and coming to different places is for that experience, because it keeps the creative centers of your brain kind of active and ever changing and ever evolving. And I think that's super critical, because you don't want to get into a rut where you feel like, okay, this is my style, it's never going to change. And while superficially my work may look similar now than it did from the 80s or 90s, I think there are a lot of subtle changes I've made over the decades, and the amount of cross-hatching or even the proportions. So those are really important things if you want to keep your work kind of fresh. And so that means interacting with fans, seeing what they're interested in, meeting other artists from other countries and seeing their approaches to artwork. And then going around the cities and seeing architecture and how people live, and realizing that it's not the only way. Like when you live in America, sometimes you get very focused on this is what life is, and it's important for you to get out and realize there's so much joy and love and beauty in the rest of the world. And how can I capture some of that and put it into my work? Right?
You went to Italy, and you did Batman Europa based on your voyage, and it's coming out right now, right?
After how many years?
10 years, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, 20 years or something. I was in Italy 2003 to 2004. I lived there for 1 year, and it was a life-changing year. It was, you know, I set up an art studio with some Italian artists, and you know, I drew. We would start working at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and draw till midnight. Then we go to the bar, come back around 3 o'clock, draw some other stuff. So it was a really kind of magical time, and really got to know the culture in an in-depth way that a tourist could not.
Going back to the 90s, you got back to Marvel and you did Heroes Reborn, which was a big project in Marvel. What's the greatest lesson that you got? How to do a reboot of superheroes from Heroes Reborn?
Yeah, you know, I think people always ask, like, New 52 or Heroes Reborn, they're all ideas where you took something that existed and rebooted it and re-energized it, redefined it for a modern age. And again, if any of you are aspiring artists, I would hope that when you got in, or creators, I would hope that when you got in, you would have that same fearlessness to it, because you have to realize all this stuff was created by somebody. None of it existed before someone said, hey, let's put this guy in a blue suit and have him fly in the air, you know? And so you look at the history of DC Comics, between the Golden Age and the Silver Age, they changed the Flash, they changed the Green Lantern. They just completely changed the characters with the same names. And they approached it with, hey, nothing lasts forever, let's figure out a way to make it better. And certainly when you have characters that have been around for 75, 76 years, like Superman and Batman, you need to keep adding stuff to the mythology, otherwise it becomes very old and dated. And so, you know, that's the really cool thing about working in comic books. You're working through all these different generations of the best creators, all the way going back to Bob Kane and Bill Finger, and you're adding to that mythology. But man, if you're gonna add to that mythology, add something new. Don't just redraw what everyone else has done. Change it, and you know what? People are gonna hate it. The fans are gonna they're gonna go online, they're gonna go on Twitter and say it sucks, but not everyone. And at the end of the day, the coolest ideas will survive, sort of like natural selection or, you know, social Darwinism, and that's what sticks and that's what develops and defines who these characters are. So have that fearlessness if possible.
And then you got into DC and you got to draw Superman and Batman. It's like the Holy Grail, right?
Yes, for sure, the Holy Trinity, that's what we call them, the Trinity.
Can you say that an artist is complete until he draws Superman?
A what?
Is he complete as an artist until he draws Superman?
I think if you want to be a mainstream superhero artist, you would not have a fulfilled career unless you drew Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and I would even put Avengers and X-Men in there, Spider-Man, that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to get into mainstream comics, those are the characters you want to do. If you want to create your own stuff, you know, there's Vertigo, there's Image, there's a lot of other opportunities to do that. But, you know, I got into comics because I love these characters as a kid. They really helped me adjust to America. I learned how to read English by reading comic books because you could read the stories by just looking at the pictures. Then I realized, oh, these white balloons have text and they're important, so I should read those as well. And so it kind of inspired me and motivated me to learn English, and it got me to the point where I am in my life.
And when you guys did the New 52, the first series was the Justice League series that you draw. Is that like some tombstone in your career? Do you divide it before New 52, or how do you see the Justice League that you draw?
How do I see them?
Yeah.
You know, whenever I work on any character, I really think about my favorite versions of those characters that were drawn by previous generations of creators. And I love the Justice League around the 1970s. There was an artist named Dick Dillon, and even Neil Adams, the way he drew the characters. And so that's why I was really trying to channel sort of these classic versions of these characters. And the thing with the Justice League is, with any project, it's not just about the art and the characters that are in the book, but it's about who you get to work with, your collaborator, your writer. And so my main focus in the latter part of my career has really been working with the best writers possible. And so Jeff Johns was the collaborator on the Justice League stuff. And he just knows these characters so well, and he has such a love and understanding of their motivations and who they are. And I just learned a lot working with him about who these characters are, and that's a big part of it. I learned a lot about storytelling when I worked with Frank Miller. I learned a lot about how to stage a story working with Jeff Loeb. So every time I work with a different writer, not only am I visualizing or bringing to life their stories, their words, but I'm also learning about how they look at stories and how they structure stories. And I think that makes you a better creator, thinker in general.
Have you seen the new trailer for Batman vs Superman?
Have I seen the trailer? Have you guys seen the trailer for it?
Yeah. And did you like it?
I saw the trailer. How could I not see the trailer? Yes, I've seen the trailer. Yes. What do you think?
Yeah, because when Justice League start to rise, like the dawn of justice, it's a big thing, right, for DC movies?
Yes, for sure. Huge.
It's huge.
Yeah, and the title, it suggests the Justice League movie that they're going to make, right? Dawn of Justice.
What's the formation of Justice League that you feel that the most important, the formation? Like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, who else?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The classic 70s version that I loved, it had Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, and then it was Green Arrow and Hawkman maybe, and Atom, I think. But obviously Martian Manhunter is another big one, and then Cyborg is the most recent addition. So I think that's really exciting to see, again, how it's kind of evolved and changed over the years. But obviously Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman are the core of it. And then when you look at the trailer, obviously they're approaching the franchise the same way.
Ok. A gente vai abrir agora para perguntas, por favor. Organizem uma fila aqui desse lado e a gente fala com o Jin Lee. Speaking as a publisher, what's the biggest pleasure that you have personally as a publisher?
As a publisher, it's actually coming to events like this. You know, what's really awesome about comic books is that as an artist, you draw these stories, but when you draw these stories, you're essentially working from home, or you're working in a small little office. So you don't realize the stories you're telling are going to reach so many people from all around the world. And this is, so in a way, it's like a performance, but with a very, 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 very delayed reaction, right? So you're playing a song, and then you wait 5 months, you go out, and you hear either the cheers or the jeers, right? And so it's nice to be able to come out and hear people talk about their love of the comic books, not just the work I do, but just everything published by by DC or even Marvel, and to see that kind of passion, because that's what we live for. We're telling these stories to entertain people, and I think there's no higher honor or compliment that you can receive as a creator than when I meet someone who says, hey, the very first comic book I bought was, Batman Hush, and that inspired me to become a comic book artist or an art director or a graphic designer. And you realize that the work you did actually had an impact on someone, and kind of changed their lives the same way The Dark Knight Returns really changed my life back in 1986.
Hi, Jin.
Hello.
I don't know if you remember me, but I was one of the guys responsible for your first coming to Brazil in 1995.
Thank you very much.
I translated your panel at that time.
Yeah.
So.
Do you remember that panel?
Yeah.
It was a room, it was super hot. There was no air conditioning.
It was a 250 theater, and there was 500 sitting on the floor.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy to see you again this time. And I just want to give you a gift, because I wrote in the magazine I wrote nowadays, I wrote an article about that event in 1995, and I have a CD with photos and articles that I published at an interview that I made with you at that time. And
wait, you waited 20 years to give me a gift? You don't have mail here? You don't have mail?
Okay, and there is even a
thank you very much. Obrigado.
And there's even a recording of the panel at that time, having in a CD here.
I'd love to see it.
I just want to give you this right now.
Yeah, so one of the really cool things about this signing is some of the people that were there 20 years ago, I mean, they were little kids, right? And they've come, and they've got photographs, and I look like a little goofy kid, and they look like a goofy kid, and that's really cool to see people, I mean, 20 years later, they're still connected to comic books, so it's really fantastic. It's very emotional.
Okay, so let me give you the gift right now.
Próxima lá, pode mandar.
Você criou um estilo de ilustrar que influenciou muitos artistas. Alguns chegavam realmente a imitar a sua arte. Qual foi a sua reação quando você percebeu o impacto que o seu trabalho tinha provocado no mercado de quadrinhos?
It's on my wife. No, I'll tell you, I wasn't that bent out of shape. I know some artists feel like their style's being stolen. I took it as a sign of flattery, imitation being the highest form of flattery, and you know, everyone's got to make a living, and so at the end of the day, I thought it was really cool that they thought enough of my style to kind of incorporate it, and then you know, and I knew that it wouldn't last forever. I think anytime you oversaturate anything, any type of style, any sound of music, people kind of turn off to it. So my only fear was that maybe fans wouldn't like my work because they saw too much of it. But again, part of changing the style over the years was part of that approach that I have to keep evolving so that the people that maybe are copying me or influenced by my style don't exactly get what I'm doing, if that makes sense. Okay?
Muito obrigado.
Hello, Jim. First of all, thank you for everything. We all know that both Marvel and DC have great stories, and you said you really enjoyed working on both. And my question is, if someone ever gets to you and say, look, it's in your hands to publish a DC Marvel crossover, what would you do?
What would I do?
Yeah.
I would draw Batman fighting Wolverine. Yes. And Batman would win, right? Of course. Anyway, so I'll tell you that I think it's an intriguing idea. It's been done before. I would never say never, but right now I think Marvel has a very established, you know, editorial direction, and we have the same. And so, you know, I think it's a cool thing to do, but right now, and it's not that we're not friendly with one another. I mean, I really respect what they're doing and like a lot of the line, and the creators are amazing over there. But I think you just need, it all has to start from the creative idea. It really needs to come from a writer or a creator basically saying, I've got this great idea that's never been done before. For us to say at the top level, like, let's just do this because people will buy it and we'll sell a lot of copies, it's just generally not a very successful approach to any sort of large project like that where there's going to be such high expectations. But, you know, we'll see.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. When you created Fairchild from Generation 13, was it intentional to make her the ultimate feminist, anticipating all the tendencies of strong women characters of the years that would come after that?
That was part of it. I mean, when we did Gen 13, we wanted to kind of, when you first look at it, it looks very sort of typical in terms of the structure of the characters, but we wanted to have a lot of different things that you haven't traditionally seen in a group book, where a female lead who's the leader of the team, who's the smart, strongest one in the team. We had an Asian character that was not the brightest guy. He wasn't an aspiring doctor or mathematician or whatever. He was a kind of a grungy slacker type. We had a American Indian type character who was gay. So there's a lot of things that we did. The characters came from very troubled homes. So there's a lot of things that we were trying to do to kind of reinvent the very straightforward, vanilla kind of teen book that I think most of us grew up with. So yeah, I mean, that's very astute of you. I applaud you on your observations.
Thank you. Can we hope for more Generation 13?
What?
Can we hope for more Generation 13?
Again, it comes down to the right creators. The same way I said that we want to really save Wildcats for myself, is that I think you just need someone with a great Gen 13 pitch that really know and love the characters. But if that comes along, we'll definitely do it. Thank you.
Hi. Eu vou falar em português porque o meu inglês não é muito bom. Atualmente, tem algum...
What is he talking? His English is weird. Okay, hold on. Okay, I got it now. Sorry.
Atualmente, tem algum personagem da Marvel Comics que você gostaria de desenhar? E se sim, que tipo de mudanças você faria nele, se pudesse?
I liked a lot of the underpowered characters. So when I first started on X-Men with the regular run with Chris Claremont, he said, who do you want to draw? And I said, Nick Fury, Captain America, Black Widow, and he used a couple of those characters in that storyline. He just made up a storyline because I wanted to draw those characters, and he made a really cool, fun story. But I was always drawn to the characters that didn't necessarily have huge superpowers. So Black Widow, Nick Fury, and even Wolverine. I know he's got powers, but you know, for the most part, it's not like he can fly or anything. He's a very he's a ground fighter. He's very much kind of in your face. And so those are the characters. Yeah, and I never really drew a lot of the Avengers, so I thought that might be kind of fun to do. My goal really wouldn't be to go back and redraw all the X-Men. It might be cool to do like a Wolverine book, and then he would have other guest stars. But again, more from the spy side of things, the Nick Fury, Shield, Black Widow type stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi. I wish I had a good story how I started reading comics when I was a kid, but for a long time it was a boy thing. Girls were not allowed to read, weren't allowed to cosplay, so it was this closed world. And
yes, it has changed a lot. It's
it
changed dramatically.
has changed a lot. You can see for all those beautiful women there, right here.
Yes. Yeah.
And I have to say, my favorite character from DC is Batman. It's totally identification. And they are republishing DC Classics. And since you said you can remember where you write it, I wanted to know about when you write this, if you could see.
Which one is that?
The silence?
Oh, Silencio?
It's Hush, Batman Hush.
Batman Hush?
Sorry.
Batman Hush. So that cover, I just, I drew like a long time ago, actually. And I used it because I had such a hard time figuring out what the first cover would be. There's a lot of pressure. Like the first cover has to be epic and iconic, and that's what people remember the series from. But that book I drew in secret for a long time because I hadn't drawn anything for a long time, and my reputation was not being on time. And so I actually drew 6 issues in secret before there were only 3 people at DC that knew that I was even drawing that book. And I did that for about 6 months, and once we had 6 months of work in the drawer, we then announced it to more people within the company. But I was living in La Jolla in San Diego, and most of the first half was done in San Diego, but the second half I started traveling to promote the book. And so when Batman's finding Ra's al Ghul in the desert, those pages were drawn in a hotel in Bologna. And All-Star Batman and Robin was drawn in a hotel in Italy as well. So there's a lot of stuff like that. And even when I worked on the X-Men, the Extinction Agenda, I drew that in Italy as well, but from years before. And some of the pages I drew on the floor of a train station in the winter with all these Italian men, these old Italian men smoking cigarettes, watching me while I was drawing on the cold marble floor. And that was just a really cool memory. I don't even know what I drew, but I just remember them watching and just kind of choking on all the smoke because the FedEx, they didn't go to your house to deliver anything. You had to go to their FedEx department. And I lived in Siena, which was hours outside of Florence. So I had to take the bus to Florence, and then I had to finish the page at the train station there, and then take a taxi cab out to the airport where the FedEx department was to mail the page back to New York City. This is in the 80s. So that's what, I just remember that I can't believe that these comic books actually came out, because now we just email everything, and it's instantaneous, or near instantaneous. So it's staggering to me. The same way I can't imagine how people lived without having cell phones, right? So that's what I remember.
It's so beautiful. It's totally now my favorite story of Batman.
Thank you very much, and thanks for being a part of comics.
Hi, Mr. Lee. I will do my question in Portuguese because I think it's a question everyone wants to know. Agora que o...
I actually understood what you said in English. That's all right. English is my second language. I was born in Korea, remember?
Agora que o Frank Miller não está aqui, eu queria que você respondesse com bastante sinceridade. O que você pensava quando você estava desenhando o Batman e Robin? All Stars Batman e Robin.
I would say if you were in the room too, I have no secrets with Frank. It was very intimidating, right? He was my idol, he was my hero, he was the guy that inspired me to actually get into this business. And so I would get the scripts from him and I would read the descriptions and I would go like, I know exactly what Frank would draw. And it would be something very powerful and to the point. And I was like, I can't draw that because that's not the way I draw. And ultimately, I shouldn't be doing this project to make it look like Frank had a guy trying to draw like Frank. So I had to think of the next best thing to draw, and I drew that in my style. But I've told him in person, I curse him because there are a lot of issues where he made me draw animals and creatures, and I absolutely hate that. You know, like frogs and deers and all that stuff. Like there's an issue with 2 deer running. And if you go on the internet, you can find those exact 2 deers running around because I just took that picture and traced it. So I changed a little bit of it. So there's a lot of, when you draw animals, they have a very different musculature and a way they move. And so every creature is different. A horse doesn't move the same way as a cat, as away from a dog. And so a lot of them just look really not great. But I applaud him for, again, challenging me to actually draw something I wasn't comfortable with. Because again, once you just stop and only draw the things you're comfortable with, that's the end of your career right there, right? So, that's it.
Thank you.
Is that the last question?
Is that it?
No, one more? And then I have something I want to say. Okay.
Não, tem como você vai entender? Você vai entender em português?
It's in Portuguese?
Yeah. No Brasil existe uma grande rixa entre os fãs de DC Comics.
How do you say shit in Portuguese? That's what I don't know. Merda. Yes.
No Brasil existe uma grande rixa entre DC, fãs de DC e fãs de Marvel. Eu queria saber se lá fora também existe essa rixa e qual é a sua opinião sobre isso, já que as pessoas brigam, se ofendem e no final não levam a nada, porque o mundo da DC não se cruzam e, na minha opinião, um depende do outro para ter o progresso, né? Então, qual é a sua opinião sobre isso?
Yeah, I think I look at it as a fun rivalry. Of course, people take any rivalry to the extremes, right? But I think it's fun, and competition is healthy, and you know, I love them both though. So at the end of the day, I think there's the best thing is better stories, and I don't care if it comes from DC or Marvel or any other publisher. The better stories you have, the more people are going to love comic books, and at the end of the day, that's the future of our business. So if you just love Marvel, great. When you smarten up and finally discover DC, even better. But at the end of the day, there's room for everybody in this business. Bright people, dumb people, everybody. We can all love comics, right? Anyway, so all right, before we end, can I just say one thing? Yeah. So normally when I do a panel like this in the United States, we actually have a drawing table and a projector. If you look on YouTube, there's a video of me doing that, and I draw sketches while I talk, and then I give away a sketch. Obviously, we have nothing like that here. Marcelo told me, I don't want you to draw, Jim. I only want you to talk. So blame Marcelo. It's his fault. Anyway, so... I'm just kidding, I'm kidding. Marcelo, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
So, I did draw something in advance.
Wow.
And so,
You're going to give it away?
I don't know if you can see it. So it's just a drawing of Batman. I have to make some last minute touch-ups. Hold on a second. Fill in for me, 5 seconds. Go ahead. Thank you everyone for coming.
So what are you going to do? Are you going to do a trivia?
So we're going to give this away. I don't know, trivia, I'm just worried that too many people will say yes at the same time.
Yeah.
So hold on 1 second, I have an idea. All right?
Okay, all right,
But
all right.
Thank people.
Ó, enquanto o Jim Lee está desenhando, vamos lembrar que ele vai fazer um painel com o Frank Miller sobre Cavaleiro das Trevas 3. Eles vão falar no domingo sobre a novidade da DC. A minissérie começou a sair agora, é uma minissérie em 8 partes. A primeira parte, a primeira edição, foi publicada no dia 25 de novembro lá nos Estados Unidos. E eles vão falar bastante sobre ela, porque a volta do Frank Miller ao Cavaleiro das Trevas é uma história que continua do segundo volume. Ele resgata muitas coisas da primeira minissérie de 1986 e é muito interessante. O Jim Lee, como é o publisher da DC, ele tem muita coisa para falar também. Então vai ser um painel muito interessante. O Jim Lee vai mediar e o Frank Miller vai comentar. Então vai ser muito legal ver o que eles vão trazer no domingo. Voltem no domingo, porque aí a gente vai conseguir ter a presença do Jim Lee aqui de novo. Enquanto ele está finalizando, eu queria esse desenho para mim, mas infelizmente a gente vai ter que dar aqui para o pessoal.
So, I know I said to say thanks. I didn't hear my name in there anywhere, just FYI. But anyway, I'm sure you meant something positive. So I just put an outline on it so you can see a little better. And it says Jim Lee 2015 CCXP and then hashtag come to Brazil. Because apparently every Brazilian person knows that phrase in English, because I see it online everywhere. Yes, yes. So how do I give this away? I'm thinking, all right, so you look over here, I'll look over here. So, no, keep your hands down, please, thank you. So there's only one, so more people can be unhappy than happy. So I apologize in advance. So if someone, you guys have driver's license with you, right? ID or something. Keep your hand. So the first person that says me and jumps up, but it's your birthday, you can prove it. Birthday? No one's?
Yeah, birthday.
Right there? Over there. I saw that person over there. Okay. If he can't prove it's his birthday. Oh, yeah, no, but I saw him first. I'm sorry. See, I knew this was. Okay, this is where he lives, so if any of you want to get this sketch from him later, no. Edar? Is today the 12th? No. I'm like, this is not March, no, that's not April 12th, this is December 4th. This is not right. No, okay, sorry. Happy birthday, I'm sorry, but it was the first person I saw, so next time.
Muitas felicidades, muitos anos de vida, parabéns pra você, esta data querida. Felicidades, muitos anos de vida. All right, Jim Lee, ladies and gentlemen.